My fellow Amberlanders, dear citizens of our great nation, I send patriotic salute to each and every one of you across the globe, and especially on ground zero. And I salute the bravery of our brave fighters all over the territory. I want to pay homage especially to our fighters in the state of Meme and the city of Ndop, who have been fighting relentlessly in the past days. I also pay homage to our fallen hero who passed away a few days ago in the brigade of Bamenda. My fellow Ambazonians, we have come a long way, and I am proud of what we have achieved. Very few people in the history of the world under such level of oppression and impunity have been able by themselves, through their skills of self-defense, targeted diplomacy and internationalization, raise the bar the way we have done. I want to thank each and every one of you who has remained committed. Our fine people on GZ, who on every Monday light the candle of hope, show their commitment through ghost towns to the liberation of our homeland, in remembrance of all those who've laid their lives for our great nation, and in honor of all those whose liberty has been taken away from them. Fellow Ambazonians, our struggle is not simply to attain an abstract called independence. Our struggle is for the dignity of the Ambazonian people. Our struggle is that of existence, the protection of our lives, to live in the land of our birth with honor. My fellow countrymen and women, we have been battered for more than a century. We have survived 3 colonial regimes on our own turfs. Brave warriors before us fought great battles within our homeland to set our land free. My late dad and some of yours enlisted in the British Army to defend democracy, to defend human rights, human dignity in Europe. They fought valiantly to uphold the Magna Carta. They fought hard to make sure that France was free, that the spirit of the storming of the Bastille on July 14th was upheld. They fought hard so that the pursuit of happiness and liberty, as Americans dream of, should be maintained. Our great-great-grandfathers and our fathers gave their lives so Europe should be free, gave their lives to protect the concept of self-determination, to stop Hitler and his madness, to stop Nazism and fascism engulfing Europe and beyond, and to put people under oppression. Our struggle for freedom is far beyond the concept of independence. Independence is simply the state at which the very things we fight for, the very things that Americans died for on the beaches of Normandy, the very things that Churchill in his famous speech told the world and the British that they will fight in the sky, they will fight on land and in the high seas to protect. the very virtues and values that de Gaulle stood for against collaborators like Pétain, that the brave warriors who fought in the trenches in Poland aspired for. That's why we have been fighting, to be free from the same tyranny that Europeans fought for, to be free from the same tyranny that enlisted our parents to defend democracy, humanity, and the territorial integrity of states far beyond our own shores. After World War II, the United Nations was set up as an institution to maintain international peace and security, to make sure countries have the possibilities to resolve conflicts peacefully, to make sure values of human rights, human dignity are protected. Most constitutions across the globe have borrowed the very premise of the United Nations to formulate their constitution. The protection of human dignity is paramount for human development. The protection of human security is paramount for human development. Peace and stability within any governmental space is instrumental for all the other rights. The United Nations became a beacon for peace, an institution that could stop the scourges of war, ensure that genocide never happens again. But the structure of the United Nations has become an inhibition to the attainment of these very fundamental principles that gave rise to its creation. We saw the mass killings in Srebrenica. We watched in the last 24 hours one of our own unsung heroes, Aung San Suu Kyi, defending her country in The Hague against the scourge of the crime of genocide. We watch Kosovo's Serbs murdered in cold blood. We watch Pol Pot massacred hundreds of thousands of people in the glaring eyes of the United Nations. In less than 100 days, almost 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus were butchered under the auspices of General Delay from Canada, representing the United Nations. We've watched mass rape, systematic rape, as a weapon of war used in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And the United Nations has remained absolutely powerless. We've watched in Central African Republic mass murder. In the last 3 years, hundreds of our villages have been burned down. In the last 3 years, hundreds of thousands of our people have been made homeless. In the glaring face of the world, our honor, dignity, trampled upon. In the 21st century, the right to speak replaced by the obligation of terror over a people who simply demand their right to live in the country of their birth. In the last 3 years, we've watched Mami Api burnt in her home because the government of Yaoundé used disproportionate force, helicopter gunship, to roast Mami Api. We watched Samsoya beheaded. The atrocities of Cameroon amounts to the crime of genocide. The intent of Cameroon is not only to occupy Ambazonia, but to make sure they can eliminate Ambazonians as a people. They've used cultural genocide. They've used the infection of our people with HIV virus. They've used sterilization on our girls to reduce the population. They've committed all sorts of crimes within our homeland. None of their generals, none of their governors, none of their ministers has been held accountable for the crimes they've committed against our people. For the crimes that Oben Ashu committed in Do, he was promoted to governor of the southern state. for the crimes that Atanganji has been committing. His rank has been raised to territorial minister. All the ministers who have, by omission or commission, sponsored the crime of genocide in our homeland have received acclamation, still being received across the globe. Institutions like the Commonwealth, whose charter upholds the respect of human rights, fair trial, and good governance, the rule of law, has remained disturbingly silent or at times taken side with the regime. We've watched the Secretary General of the Commonwealth receive gifts from a tyrant and autocrat who's liquidated coffers of his own country, stashed them in foreign accounts. The basic principles upon which great institutions like the United Nations were formed have been floundered. The world has remained silent. Yesterday, the United States of America invoked its right under Chapter 6, Articles 35 of the United Nations Charter to raise our case again in the United Nations Security Council. We want to applaud the United States, not simply because it raised the case of the Security Council, but because from the onset of this conflict, it has stood firm. Its ambassador in Yaoundé has spoken loudly. Its houses, the Senate and Congress, have discussed our issue, passed resolutions. The executive has taken actions like withdrawing Cameroon's status under AGAO. Military aid and collaboration with Cameroon was reduced in the month of February. This is courage. And on behalf of the Ambazonian people, I want to salute the United States for this courage. But this hasn't gone far enough. In the face of genocide, the United States and all members of the Security Council have an obligation to invoke the responsibility to protect the lives of our people, to protect the dignity of our people. The United States and all other countries must show clarity of purpose and focus. The international system is disjointed in its approach. This ambiguity has always given Mr. Biya and Cameroon an escape route, believing in the use of force to resolve political issues. This has gone on for the past 37 years because of the lack of a focused stance by the international community that should show Cameroon that the world is unwavering in its stance. It's unwavering back in the very basic principles for the maintenance of international peace and security. That the world is unwavering in upholding the respect of human rights and human dignity. It has wavered in the face of brutality from Cameroon, giving it an opportunity to escape scrutiny for almost half a century. The world needs to show clarity. Are they behind the Swiss talks, or are they behind Mr. Biya's national dialogue? You cannot stand for both. We know the national dialogue is a charade. While we have criticized the lack of standardization in the Swiss process, we have made concrete proposals on how that process can be adjusted to reflect international standard of fairness, so that our people can sit with Cameroon when Cameroon commits to it. The Commonwealth must be very clear if it backs an international negotiated settlement or it backs a domestic charade playing for time while war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide is continuously being committed in Ambazonia. Do you stand behind an international negotiated settlement, or do you stand behind a political charade, a delaying tactics called the National Dialogue. This clarity is important from the Security Council, is important from the United States. My fellow Ambazonians, we have been committed to peace. For almost 50 years, we march on our streets. For almost 50 years, we employ the force of argument, arguing based on the issues, on the laws, on sociology, on history, on the tangibility of our cause, on the validness of our case, on the justness of our struggle for existence. We've employed all arguments. We've exhausted all remedies, taking Cameroon to the African Commission on Human Rights, individual communications at the Human Rights Committee. We have done so because we have believed from the beginning that our cause is rooted on a legal foundation. From a historical perspective, we are a people with the right to external self-determination. As far as recent history is concerned, we have been an independent state whose sovereignty was violated when Cameroon crossed an international border to install a system of brutality and banality in the land of our birth. We have shown our commitment to peace in the way we have treated Cameroonians in our country. We've shown our commitment to peace in the way we've conducted ourselves with other foreign nationals, even though their countries have collaborated with Cameroon to kidnap leaders, pass them through kangaroo trials. We've shown our commitment to peace with peaceful demonstrations across different capitals, persuading countries and nations to be able to back our cause for external self-determination. And we still remain committed to peace. In invoking the right to self-defense, it wasn't simply to fight for independence. It was to protect our dignity, to protect our life. The right to life is the most important, without which the right to dignity, health, speech, conscience, association will not exist. In the absence of the invocation of the POC, protection of civilians in times of conflict, in the absence of the invocation of the responsibility to protect, we were left with no choice to protect our lives by ourselves in the most mundane of ways, but conducting ourselves, upholding international norms and values. That's who we are. The world must listen to us. France must understand that the same right to freedom which they fought for in storming the Bastille is the same the Ambazonians craft and die for. The Americans must understand that the American Civil War was to establish the most powerful country in the world, while people of all colors and races will have the right to the pursuit of happiness. The United Kingdom must understand that the Magna Carta is good for the United Kingdom, as the right to be free is good for Ambazonians. The Norwegians, the Swedes, and the others must know that we as humans also have a right to be free. And that the recognition of Ambazonia is going to be for the interests of France, the United States, the United Kingdom. It's going to be a place where they can do business, with the fundamental values that make their society, that of freedom, respect of human dignity, protection of the life of people, equal opportunities and equal outcome, will be protected in our country. That you can trade a free Ambazonia for a country that is rated one of the most corrupt in the world, lacks good governance, does not uphold habeas corpus, gives its people no opportunity for the right to vote, to choose their own leaders. You can't trade a country that established the first democratic pluralism in Africa for a political autocracy that lacks a space for pluralism. You can't trade a free Ambazonia where there is opportunity for our people and for your people, for a country whose ministers have looted treasuries and banked them in foreign bank accounts for the interest of others. You can't trade a free Ambazonia for a political system that has not showed itself as the harbinger of stability in the Gulf of Guinea. We do not only fight for our freedom, we are the beacon of the very freedoms that millions of Africans yearn and fight and die for. A free Ambazonia will be the harbinger, hope for millions of people across the globe. And I call on the United States and the United Nations to do the right thing. Our right to be free cannot be taken away again. Right to exist cannot be taken away again. This determination I speak here today is a reflection of the overwhelming majority of our people, that they will die for a free country, and that all the gimmicks being played across the globe in the face of genocide will not stop us from resisting. We thank the world for the baby steps. We call upon them to defend freedom, to defend the right to exist, to defend the rights of our people to education, the hopes of princes to play under a guava tree, the hopes of millions of Ambazonians living out here in squalor hopelessly to return home to the land of their birth. That's why they fight. That's why they are dying. And that's why the world must listen to us. We are committed to peace. We have made it absolutely clear that there must be some adjustment in the international negotiated settlement approach. In negotiating peace for South Sudan, there were more than 3 countries. In negotiating peace for East Timor, there were more than 3 countries. For Northern Ireland and other places. We call on the world to commit. We don't believe in rhetorics. Even Resolution 1608 that asks the world to take part in the post-plebiscite conference to ensure that a federal system was put in place. The world abandoned us. They abandoned us to Cameroon to hoodwink us, turn its own constitution into la Constitution Federale, gradually turn thriving democracy into a state of anarchy. The world must commit through instruments of the United Nations. They must guarantee any process of negotiated settlement. We have decided on our team of experts. They are ready. Once Cameroon commits, once the world makes the process a multilateral process, once they shift the location of the process, once they show commitment to not only the process but to the implementation, our team of experts, backed by political and defense leadership, will meet Cameroon at any time to negotiate its surrender from Ambazonia. The world has to listen to us. It's our country. It's not yours. It's our place of refuge. It's not yours. It's our hope, collectively. Fellow Ambazonians, in the past days and weeks, we have been working with different United Nations agencies to ensure that our people have humanitarian support. I wouldn't speak much about it, but you will be briefed by the Secretary for Human Rights and Humanitarian Affairs and the Vice President of the Ambazonian Governing Council. We are making sure that these agencies can do their work and be protected. But we also ask the international system to ensure that it can protect humanitarian workers working within the territorial space of Ambazonia. We have been consulting. I understand Cameroon is planning an election in the month of February. There will be no election in Ambazonia. There will be no single vote cast. I have consulted with the Sisiko camp. I will reach out to all the leaders. I will be appointing the Vice President of the Ambazonian Governing Council as a shuttle diplomat to build consensus on the issues of international negotiation and on how we can gradually build bridges across different movements. We will have to make some historic compromises amongst ourselves. But make no mistake, we will continue to arm our boys on the ground to ensure they continuously protect our right to existence, our right to life, the dignity of our people. And I call upon you never to blink, never to relent. It is our collective sacrifice that has brought us here thus far. And even if they take away our lives, they will never trade our land for Cameroon. God bless you all. God protect Ambazonia.